Welcome into LaTulip's Film Room, and today I'm excited about this one. Illinois finally gets a win, ends that ugly 3-game skid with an 81-61 win over Iowa. And while there were some good things offensively, holding Iowa, pretty good offense, to its lowest point total of the year was big. And Brad Underwood, Kylan Boswell, Tomislav Visic talked all about a little bit of an adjustment on defense. So, Mike, I know you're going to help us break it down and break down how much it helped Illinois, how much it can help them moving forward.
Yeah, definite change on defense. It wasn't a complete overhaul, but there were noticeable changes. I think it was much needed. A lot of success. They've had a lot of success in drop over the years, and just it was clear that this team was in need of something different. And I first want to kind of talk about why drop was important, what drop coverage does. When you play in drop coverage, obviously you have the guy guarding the ball handler going over the top of the screen. And the idea is to kind of funnel and really play 2-on-2 in the middle of the floor, funnel guys into that paint. Your big is retreating, force shots over the top, rear view contests, force those mid-range shots. And then, because you don't have to rotate, teams get less 3-point attempts. Teams shoot a lower volume of threes, and you don't have to get in rotation and can be there on the catch. That's what drop is for. And what they introduced the other night was, I wouldn't call it wasn't a hard hedge. You would call it like a stab. I think they would call it a stab instead of hard hedge. And all that allows you to do, and I'll show it here in the film, obviously, all that allows you to do is buy enough time for that guy guarding the ball to square things back up and give the ball handler a little bit more hesitation, a little bit more pause, so that it's not just ball screen and just freight train downhill, because that puts Tomislav Visic in a really tough spot. So let's just go back. Let's go back and watch drop. Right, let's go watch just the difference here. Humrikaus retreating into the paint. I'll go back. Obviously, it's Michigan State, so it's pretty quick. But here we go. Ball screen. Humrikaus is going to drop into the paint, and what they want to force is this little floater here. And Kohler, you got to stay level with him. They end up emergency switching here, but teams just got way too comfortable. Mm-hmm. And teams that are talented like Michigan State in that painted area got so comfortable just playing against a defense that wasn't providing, I think, much resistance. And so here's another clip, and it's Richardson again. And this is what happens. This is what happens with younger teams, right? With guys that aren't used to fighting over screens like this. I mean, drop coverage, you're cooked if you get hit on a screen. They're really fortunate over the years to have a guy like Trent Frazier that never got screened. Kofi and Coleman have put them in a really, really good spot. And here we go again. Here's Fears is about to dish it off here, I think, to Holloman, I guess to Akins. Come up, they set a screen. I mean, Riley gets hung up on it again. And even if you're back there and drop, it's just way too easy. Like these guys are getting way too comfortable coming off these screens. So what's the change? What's the difference? And you can tell. Let's go back to that last clip, because I want to pause it so that you can see the depth of where Tomislav is when Jay Nakins comes off on the getting downhill here. So swing it over. It's a great little shallow cut from Fears too. But just look where Visic is.
Yeah, under the big logo. Yeah,
I mean he's under the big logo, and then you see the difference. One, I just think it makes Tomislav more engaged. But two, I mean, watch this. They'll go into a bit of a dribble handoff here. He comes back off. I mean, he is up to touch.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it. He's up to touch on the screen. They come screen, swing it over. I thought they did a really good job of keeping their matchups too. They didn't switch as much.
Yep.
So, I mean, Boswell on Sanford, that's the matchup we want. We don't want to switch likes. We want that to maintain the matchup. I mean, you even see there, Riley's even stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's play this over again, because I'm hesitant to go back all the way back and have Synergy tweak out on me. But watch throughout the possession. I thought guys looked more engaged for one against a top 30 offense since February 1st, even though Iowa hasn't fared extremely well in Big Ten play. So no switch here, which is great. They get back, but even on the dribble handoff and the screen here, Will's just kind of stabbing and getting back to Traore. So those two things were very noticeable throughout the game and very different from the way Illinois has guarded.
And you mentioned
here.
You mentioned just keeping Boswell and Sanford, right? Like if Will Riley gets on to Sanford, it's probably a different story, right? Like it's just Boswell's that good. I thought KJ did a really good job on Dix as well.
I think they've seen what I've seen and we've broken down in film is I think Will's a competitor. He's good, but at 6'8", it's really hard to chase guys off ball on screens. We saw with Isaiah Evans in the Duke game too. But I'll show this. I mean, this is the type of indecision that's created because switching to stabs, when you don't have Merez and you can't win that rebounding margin in the fashion that you've won it throughout the year, you can't also be a team that forces no turnovers. That's going to put a ton of strain on your defense and really on your offense if you can't get stops and get out in transition. So this is even different with Tomislav. Tomislav would typically probably be back firmly on the G here. And if Peyton Sanford curls, he's just waiting there for him to curl and retreating into the paint. Now he's up. And again, ready to take that stab. Dix comes off and curls. You got to think Iowa prepared for drop.
Yeah.
I mean, they prepared for Tomislav to be air traffic control in the paint. So he curls, and Harding's like, well, I can't throw the curl because Tomislav's there. So I'm assuming you see Tomislav, so you're going to straight cut. So now I throw a pass, which would be for a straight cut, and it goes right into Trey White's hands. These are turnovers, which, great, Iowa, you can look at it and be like, well, that's on Iowa. Well, that's the way Illinois is guarding that forces that type of indecision. They weren't getting these type of steals and runouts.
That's right.
I mean, they're one of the lowest in the country in terms of like steal percentage for turnovers. And it led to easier buckets. So here we go. Iowa goes into a horn set. No switch there. This is different. This is different.
Nana Egu out there?
Yeah, man. That is a great and Tomislav's good at it. I'm excited to see them continue to rep this. He gets out and is able to return. Now, the one thing with Tommy that he's got to just continue to get ingrained in his mind. I know he may not be used to it at this point, but the second you take this stab, good roll guys, and this is great offense from Iowa because they're vacating this painted area. So Kylan can't be a guy to rotate over if Dembele or whatever his name is rolls to the basket. So Tommy's got to use his size here. When you stab and you get back, you have to have your hands up and force that pass to have to go threaded through your arms or lobbed over the top to give you time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets back. That's good. You keep matchups with Sanford. Trey doesn't bite on the flare screen. Will's up. I mean, I just felt like everybody was more engaged, man.
Yeah,
everybody was
prideful, right? Like even Underwood mentioned that, like guys got to guard their guy. Like, and I think there was some accountability there.
Matchup ownership is what I call it when you kind of eliminate the switching. But even here, this is just learning experience, right? If you're Tommy, you gotta kind of make up your mind in a sense. Okay, so we'll eventually get back to. Again, I'm reluctant to go to press back because Synergy gets finicky with it. But Tommy's up by the perimeter, and when Harding, I think it's Harding that ends up coming off here. They sprint into the screen. When Harding shoots this, you can't both contest it.
Yeah.
One of you guys has to be either KJ, but if KJ recognizes that Tommy's the one that's contesting that shot, he can't also contest it, and he's got to get down and prevent Dembele from getting all the way down and kind of putting you in jail in offensive rebounding. That's where this team, I think, is going to have to learn is, hey, when do I contest? When do I not contest? How do I still make the ball handler and the shooter uncomfortable? Those are going to be really, I think, key things to watch moving forward. But again, keeping matchups on the flare. Ben's kind of in drop here. Good recover. Good Kylan deny. in the gap. I mean, I was kind of thrown off, man. I mean, this offense is a well-oiled machine at times, and like dudes were getting basketballs off their face because I don't think they were ready for this type of pressure. And then there's a stab right there, right? And that stab, and not having Ben drop all the way in the paint, like it still allows KJ to take an angle to square back up, as opposed to trailing all the way behind it. Because Dix can take. I don't want to click it. I don't want to go back. But Dix, when he comes off that dribble handoff, because Ben is stabbing out, he can't take that shoulder to shoulder, cut off my guy behind me, angle downhill. He at least has to loop out a little bit, which gives KJ that angle to come back and contest. And I know the shot goes in, but I'll take a fadeaway over a guy just in rhythm coming down and shooting a floater or a pull-up.
Well, just remember how many open shots Josh Dix hit in the mid-range last year against Illinois, right? Like
a lot.
They were open and wide open.
Yes. Here it is again. Up to touch. Good from Dre. Great. And again, recognition too. This isn't drop anymore. So these guys on the weak side, Riley and Trey, and this is great. They look in tune with what's going on, because if Tommy got beat and that pass got thrown over the top, that's probably Trey's rotation from the bottom, right? And then Will sinks and fills, and then you rotate out of it. But the high hands is what I think is going to help Tommy as he's getting back. So good, square it back up. They go into another screen, stab again. Like that's different. That's a different angle Dix has to take, and allows KJ to slide and stay in front. Same thing, cut him off.
That would have been a layup before, right? Like,
yes, that would have been a point blank layup before. And then last possession here, and you've blown this game out by this point. Love the way that they close the door too. I mean, that's something where you were looking for progress after the UCLA game, after the Michigan State game, where you had leads and ended up squandering them. Again, this is the lineup with Ben at the 5, and you can still see it stab. And Harding didn't have a great floor game by any means, but there's at least. I'm always a big fan. It's what Coleman Hawkins is really good at. Coleman created, even in drop, indecision with the ball handler. Like he would stab at the ball while he was retreating.
Yeah. And
you can't. There's not like a rhythm and a sense of comfortability that these ball handlers have. And the same thing happens here with Brock Harding, because you could get him to pick the ball up. That allows KJ to square his man back up. See, look at the angle. He has to take an angle that's east-west instead of north-south. Ben has like a quick stab there, and he just coughs up the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were other turnovers that happened throughout the game that I thought, could have been worth showing, but they weren't necessarily the ball screen coverage. Guys were just so much more active in gaps and so much more active in trying to turn you over. And they need that, because, again, I mean, they got out-rebounded in this game.
Yeah.
To Iowa, a team that probably should not rebound you at this point.
But you found a way to win the possession battle because you forced turnovers and you didn't turn it over. So, Mike, now that Michigan has seen this, or Purdue has seen this, right? Because you need to do this against Braden Smith, but Trey Kaufman-Renn is the big man. Like, can they continue to do this, and what's the counter that the other teams will make now?
I think you absolutely can continue to do it. I think, well, you got to be mindful of these next 2 games, and it's good that they got a game rep of it now. And film, they'll have more practice days with it, because you are now facing 2 bigs in, forget Danny Wolf. Vlad Golden is the best big in maybe college basketball at slipping out of screens. So now when you're stabbing at that ball and it's Danny Wolf handling it, a guy that can deliver it over the top, you got to be really mindful of, one, when you stab, when you have your hands up, getting those hands up to deter that pass, getting more airtime on those passes so that guys can rotate over. That's what you got to worry about with Vlad Golden. You cannot let him slip you to death and get point-blank layups.
Is the help really important there too?
I think the help is more in a game like Michigan. The help is more important than it probably was against against Iowa. I think you're going to have instances where I think you got to rotate, or at least be on alert to rotate, with Golden slipping in and out of those screens. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn with Purdue, I mean, they love going to those short rolls. I mean, if you put 2 on the ball, it's short roll and they'll kind of play out of it. So again, you have to be ready to rotate, to at least be in the ball side gap and stunt, to make Trey Kaufman-Renn, when he gets that ball, not just catch it off the short roll and beeline downhill for a layup. You have to make him pick it up, kind of have to survey. You're stunting from the ball side gap. That's the stuff you got to do here moving forward against 2 teams that, against this type of defense, it can be tough. But I also think they're forecasting out and looking at Purdue and saying, okay, Michigan State, Indiana, what did they have in common guarding Braden Smith that forced him to turn the ball over 5 to 6 times? They put pressure on the ball. Mm-hmm. They put 2 on the ball. And so that's why I think, and I actually think Illinois is a good matchup against Purdue.
Yeah.
I think they can win that game. I think Illinois can win in Ann Arbor. I really do.
Michigan's flawed. Like, the 2 bigs scare the hell out of me when you don't have Merez Johnson, but the rest of the team is flawed.
And you know who I think is going to be guarding Danny Wolf?
Kylan
Boswell.
That's what we're talking about.
That's
it's crazy. Guy goes from Cooper Flagg, Peyton Sanford, some great guards.
That would be my guess. Well, because you want to use leverage, and he's got the lower center of gravity. He's not going to have a huge impact in terms of like the ball pressure and the windows that Danny Wolf's going to be able to deliver passes. But you just hope that the actual on-ball pressure and getting up underneath him will make him a little bit more careful with the ball, or a little bit more loose with the ball, right? And you force more turnovers, because that's what we talk. What did we talk about in the podcast, right? Why I was worried about Michigan was because of that defense, Illinois' defense against that Michigan team, because they don't force turnovers against a Michigan team. When you crawl back into the game against them, it's because they get loose with the ball. Now you've done this. Granted, they're going to scout for it, but it's been proven that that's bothered not only Danny Wolf, but it's bothered Braden Smith too.
Mike, before I let you go, I got 2 more things on this, because I found this fascinating. But Brad talked about he'd wanted to do this for a while, but Tommy was out, and then they haven't had much practice time. They did this in 2 days. Is that a legit excuse to not make the switch earlier? And how do you think Merez does in this, if he's able to come back in the postseason?
What I wonder about is whether or not they just didn't do any of it, or they were doing it in practice and couldn't implement it in the game because Tommy was out. That's what I don't know. I don't really buy into the, hey, we couldn't do it at all.
Yeah.
Without Tommy. I think you still could have, because again, there's times where Ben's in there at the 5. Merez can at least get mental reps with it and have guys on the sideline talk him through it. You do walkthrough stuff too, where Merez can maybe step in there and even with a brace on or whatever he's got, can do some things. But I don't think Merez is going to have any issue with this.
No, it's a strength of his, right?
I think it'll be really, really good for them too. And again, when we talk about moving forward, right, beyond this year too, I mean, maybe there's something that you capture here that guys become really comfortable with, that he maybe didn't want Kofi out there as much. But if you have guys that can read and react on the perimeter and understand that, like, maybe you go into next year and you're like, hey, this is a change for us that accentuates Kylan's abilities on the ball and all those things, to where we feel even more comfortable about this group and heading into next year.
Yeah, and you wonder what pieces they add defensively. Because I think KJ's been better defensively than I ever thought he would be.
Yeah.
But Dre can get over screens if he's part of this moving forward, and if they get a bigger wing that can play defense, maybe defense can be a strength of the team next year with those 2 bigs. All right, Mike, appreciate it. Thanks for making us basketball smarter as always, man.
Appreciate you, man.